She didn't want a second chance. She didn't want promises or even love back. All she wanted was the truth. One honest answer, one final word to make sense of the silence that shattered her. But it never came, and in that cruel silence, she realized something deeper, that the closure she was begging for was never hers to receive. It was hers to give, to herself. And that choice, that heartbreak, changed her forever. When you start erasing pieces of yourself just to make someone else feel more at ease, you don't realize the damage at first. You think you're being kind, you think you're being understanding, patient, mature, but what you're really doing is stepping out of your own light and into a shadow that doesn't belong to you. You stop laughing as loud. You start asking for less. You nod when your soul wants to scream. You stay when every part of you wants to run. And all of it is done in silence, like a slow surrender to a war you never signed up for. That's how it begins. Not with a crash, but with a quiet undoing. You call it love. But deep down, you know it's loss. At first, it's just little things. You stop correcting the way you're spoken to. You let the dismissive comments slide. You make excuses that maybe they're just having a bad day. You apologize when you're the one hurting. You start dressing down so no one feels intimidated. You hide your ideas because you don't want to seem like too much. You start playing small, smiling more, and speaking less. And you convince yourself it's compromise, but inside something sacred is dimming, your truth. And when you finally look in the mirror, you barely recognize her anymore. You try to hold it together. You tell yourself this is what strength looks like. You confuse silence with peace and suppression with maturity. You keep waiting for someone to notice the sacrifices you're making, but they never do. Because the more you give up, the less they see you. The less they see you, the more invisible you become. You wonder if maybe being invisible is easier than being rejected. And so, you become a background character in your own life. You bury your fire under fake smiles. And with each day that passes, the real you fades a little more. The worst part is how easy it is to lie to yourself. You say things like, I'm just being flexible, or I don't want to cause problems. You even call it loyalty. But deep inside, your spirit knows better. Every time you don't speak up, your heart breaks a little. Every time you deny your needs, your soul cries out. And every time you abandon yourself for the sake of peace, you teach others that your value is tied to your silence. It's a betrayal, not by others, but by you. And it hurts in places you can't describe. There are nights you stay up wondering how you got here. You remember who you used to be, bold, radiant, unfiltered. You miss her. You ache for her. But you've been gone so long, you're not sure how to find your way back. You scroll through pictures that feel like lifetimes ago. You listen to songs that once made you feel unstoppable. Now they just make you cry. You start questioning your worth, your identity, your strength, and you realize it wasn't just them that failed to see your value. You stopped seeing it too. Every time you walk into a room and lower your energy just to keep someone else comfortable, you lose a piece of your light. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you dim the brilliance you were born with. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to tiptoe through life, trying not to be too loud, too opinionated, too ambitious. You were created with a voice that shakes rooms and a presence that commands respect. But when you forget that, the world forgets too, and no one will fight for, or what you don't fight for yourself. You start noticing how heavy your spirit feels, not because of one big moment, but because of all the tiny ones that piled up. You carry the weight of unspoken words, unmet needs, unexplored dreams. You laugh when you want to cry, you stay when you want to leave, you care for others while you're breaking inside, and you keep hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone will see through the act. But the truth is, no one will notice your pain if you're always hiding it behind a strong face, and eventually, even you forget how much it hurts. You learn to function with the ache, you get used to pretending. You become so skilled at making others feel safe that you forget what it feels like to be safe yourself. You become the one everyone leans on while you have no one to lean on. You give wisdom while secretly wishing someone would pour into you. You keep showing up for everyone except the woman in the mirror, and that is where the slow death happens. Not in the chaos, but in the quiet moments when you choose them over you, over and over again. There is nothing noble about self-abandonment. There is nothing loving about disappearing for someone else's comfort. Real love doesn't require you to shrink. Real connection doesn't ask you to betray yourself. And deep down you know that. But the fear of being alone, misunderstood, or unloved makes you settle for being half seen. It makes you stay in spaces that no longer feel like home. And it convinces you that this is the best you'll get. But your spirit knows better, and it will keep whispering until one day you finally listen. That whisper will grow into a roar, It will shake you awake in the middle of the night. It will remind you of your worth, your voice, your brilliance. You'll stop apologizing for taking up space. You'll stop bending for approval. You'll begin choosing yourself, not because you're bitter, but because you're healing. You'll stop hiding the parts of you that once made others uncomfortable and start wearing them like armor. And when that moment comes, you won't have to explain your value. You'll walk in it, and the world will feel the shift. You keep giving, thinking one day it'll be enough. You pour love into every crack, trying to fill the empty space with hope. You show up early, stay late, do more than you should, just so you feel seen. You try to become everything. Calm when you're angry, gentle when you're breaking, soft even when the world's been cruel to you. And you call it loyalty. You call it effort. But what it really is survival. Because deep down, you've convinced yourself that love is something you must earn. That if you just do enough, be enough, bend enough, maybe then you'll finally be chosen. You tell yourself you're just a giver, that this is who you are, that you were built to heal, to nurture, to hold space. And yes, there is power in that, but there is also pain, a silent, unseen kind of ache that creeps in when your giving is not met with being valued. You give even when your heart is on empty. You listen when no one ever listens to you. You love in ways that leave you drained, all while praying that one day someone will love you the same. But it doesn't happen. And each time it doesn't, a part of you wilts in silence. It starts small, once one compromise, one skipped boundary, one more chance. You convince yourself that love means sacrificing your needs, that it's normal to lose a little of yourself in the name of connection. But over time, those small losses add up. One day you wake up and you can't find your voice. You can't remember the last time you said no. You forget what it feels like to be poured into instead of poured out. And you wonder how something so beautiful as love turned into something so exhausting. But you stay because leaving feels like failure. You stop asking for more, you silence your needs, you laugh at things that hurt, you cry quietly so no one hears, you lower your standards, not because you want to, but because you're scared that if you don't, you'll lose everything. You think that shrinking yourself is the cost of staying close. You try to be easy to love, less emotional, less demanding, less intense. And each time you abandon a piece of yourself, you hope that this will be the time you're finally seen. But the more you give, the more invisible you feel, and it breaks you in ways no one else can see. You carry the weight of two people's emotions. You explain, reassure, comfort, and hold space while your own heart is aching. You smile through disappointment. You forgive too soon. You settle too often. And all of it is because you're trying to prove you're worthy of being kept. You think if you're patient enough, kind enough, loyal enough, maybe it'll convince someone to stay. But what it really does is teach the world that you don't expect much in return, that your love is unconditional, even when it hurts. And the tragedy is you've started to believe that's just how love works. Some nights you stare at the ceiling, asking yourself why you're never enough. You wonder what else you could have done. You retrace every step, every word, every moment, looking for the mistake. But the mistake wasn't what you said or did. The mistake was believing that you had to earn what should have been freely given. You weren't too much. You weren't too hard to love. You just gave your heart to someone who never knew what to do with something so whole, so honest, so real. And it hurts, not because they left, but because you gave so much of yourself trying to make them stay. You start hiding your expectations. You call it independence. You pretend you're fine without affection, without consistency, without commitment. But it eats you alive inside because you're not okay. You're starving for reciprocity. You're longing for someone who doesn't make you beg for the bare minimum. And every time you silence that need, you betray yourself a little more. You teach your heart that its needs are too much, that your love is only safe when it's silent. And slowly, you start to believe that love always comes with pain, that it never shows up softly, gently, fully. People praise your strength, your patience, your heart, but they don't see the nights you cry into your pillow, wondering why it's always you giving everything. They don't see how tired you are of being the one who cares more. They don't hear the screams you swallow to keep the peace. They don't know the version of you that hides behind the smile. You want to be chosen, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because someone finally sees your worth without you having to prove it. But that kind of love still feels like a dream. one you're scared will never come true. You deserve to be met with the same intensity you bring. You deserve effort without asking, loyalty without testing, presence without begging. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question if you're too much or not enough. You deserve to be the woman who's loved out loud, without games, without guilt, without shrinking. But to receive that kind of love, you first have to believe you're worthy of it. And that's the hardest part, reclaiming your worth after giving so much of it away. Learning to say, I won't keep pouring into places that don't pour back. The truth is, your value doesn't rise when someone finally chooses you. Your value rises when you choose yourself, fiercely, loudly, unapologetically. When you stop tying your worth to someone else's ability to see it. When you start honoring the love you so freely give to others. It's not easy. It's like hell to walk away from the people you once begged to stay. But healing begins when you stop begging and start believing that you are enough, exactly as you are. And the love that deserves you will never make you feel like you have to earn it. There is a pain that comes from silence, not the kind that brings peace, but the kind that chokes the soul. You sit there with words trapped in your throat, knowing that if you spoke them out loud, everything might change. But you don't. You smile instead. You nod. You play the part of someone who's okay, even though every part of you is pleading to be heard. You convince yourself it's better this way, safer, less messy. You tell yourself not to ruin the moment, not to make things harder. And so, your truth sits heavy inside you, waiting for permission to breathe. You keep hoping that if you stay quiet long enough, maybe someone will notice what you're not saying. Maybe they'll ask. Maybe they'll care enough to reach for the pieces you're hiding. But the longer you stay silent, the more invisible you become. And after a while, you start to believe your feelings aren't worth expressing, that your pain is too complicated, that your needs are too loud. So you fold them up, bury them deep, and wear a mask that feels nothing like you. And the world claps for your strength, unaware of the war behind your eyes. There are moments when your silence feels like betrayal, not to anyone else but to yourself. You hear your heart screaming for more, and yet you hush it like a child who's being too loud. You feel the tension in your chest, the ache of unmet needs, the exhaustion of pretending, but still you don't speak. You stay quiet because you're afraid of being labeled too sensitive, too emotional, too much. You convince yourself that asking for more makes you difficult, so you settle for crumbs, hoping they'll one day become a meal, but the hunger in your soul only grows louder. You lie in bed replaying the moments when you should have said something, the times you felt dismissed, unimportant, forgotten, and yet said nothing. You think of the chances you had to speak up, to draw a line, to stand up for the woman inside of you. But fear held your tongue hostage. Fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing someone you cared about. So instead, you lost yourself, piece by piece. And now, all that remains is the echo of things unsaid and a heart that's tired of being quiet. You've mastered the art of hiding your pain behind polite smiles. You've learned how to laugh when you feel like crying, to nod when your chest is heavy with disappointment. You show up, act normal, carry conversations, all while battling a storm no one knows about. You keep telling yourself that things will change, that maybe next time you'll speak, but next time never comes. And every time you swallow your truth, it stings a little more. You weren't meant to be silent, you weren't created to live small, and yet here you are whispering when you were born to roar. You've stopped expecting people to meet you where you are. You lower your standards, your voice, your needs, just to keep the peace. You tell yourself it's not worth the argument. You decide your silence is better than your sadness being invalidated, but deep down, you know you deserve more. You deserve to be heard without begging, to be seen without shrinking, but silence has become your shield. The only way to protect your heart from disappointment. And while it may keep you safe, it also keeps you stuck. Stuck in a life where you feel half loved and half alive. There are times when you catch glimpses of the woman you used to be, bold, passionate, unafraid to speak her truth. And for a moment you miss her. You remember what it felt like to stand tall, to take up space, to demand more, but that woman feels like a memory now. Life has taught you to. That being soft gets you hurt, that being honest gets you punished, that being real makes people run. So you silence her, you bury her voice under layers of caution, but she's still there, waiting for you to remember that your truth is still worthy. You tell yourself that silence makes you strong, that staying quiet is maturity, that not reacting means you've grown. But the truth is, silence has become your prison. It keeps you from connection, from healing, from being fully known. You crave intimacy, but fear what it would mean to open up. You want to be loved deeply, but you're terrified that your truth will scare people away. So, you build walls and call them boundaries, you isolate and call it independence. But at night, your silence screams louder than your thoughts, and it hurts in places that no one else can see. You watch others live loudly, speak boldly, ask for what they want, and you wonder how they do it. You wonder how they don't shrink when they speak their minds, how they still feel worthy even when they're vulnerable. You wish you could do the same, but every time you try, your voice shakes, your hands tremble, your heart races. Because silence has become familiar even when it hurts, and breaking it feels like breaking yourself. But you're not broken, you're just scared. Scared that your truth won't be received with the same love you offer so freely. One day, you'll get tired of quieting your soul. One day, the pain of silence will outweigh the fear of speaking. One day, your voice will rise, shaky, cracked, uncertain, but still yours. And when that day comes, you'll remember what it feels like to be whole. You'll remember that your truth deserves air, that your heart deserves space, that your voice deserves volume. You won't beg to be heard. You'll speak because you matter. Not to be accepted, but because silence no longer serves you. And in that moment, you'll feel the power of everything you almost lost coming back to life. ChatGPT said, "You sit there holding on to questions that will never be answered. The pain twists in your chai." That's because all you ever wanted was clarity. Not a grand apology, not some dramatic confession, just the truth. Just something to help you understand why things fell apart the way they did. But silence is all you're left with. And that silence screams louder than any words ever could. You replay everything over and over, hoping maybe you missed something, maybe there's a clue buried in the memories. But the answers never come. And the weight of the unknown starts to break you in places no one sees. You find yourself checking your phone, hoping there's a message that never arrives. You stare at old conversations like they hold some hidden meaning, trying to decode where it all went wrong. You cry into your pillow at night, not because you're weak, but because heartbreak doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up and stays. You think closure will help you move on, that if you just knew why, you could let go. But the truth is, some stories end without punctuation, and you're left holding chapters that were never finished, aching for a conclusion that may never come. There's a part of you that wants to scream, that wants to demand the respect of explanation, but you don't. You sit with your pain quietly, afraid of looking desperate, afraid of not being heard even when you do speak. So you beg for closure in your head, in your prayers, in your tears. You write messages you never send. You rehearse conversations that will never happen. And each time you think of reaching out, something inside you breaks a little more. Because deep down, you know you're chasing peace from a place that never had the intention to offer it. It feels like a cruel kind of abandonment, not just of your heart, but of your dignity. To be left without reason, without a goodbye, without the decency of explanation. And it makes you question everything about yourself. Were you not good enough? D. Did you expect too much? Did you love too loudly? You analyze every word you ever said, every moment you were vulnerable, as if somehow you caused the collapse. But heartbreak doesn't always come from what you did wrong. Sometimes it comes from loving someone who didn't know how to hold something so real. You keep waiting for a sign that the pain mattered to someone other than you, that all the nights you stayed up crying weren't just a waste, that your love wasn't invisible. But the silence answers back with emptiness. And that emptiness feels like rejection, even when no words were spoken. You look in the mirror and see someone who gave everything and got nothing in return. And still, you want to understand. Still, you crave a single word to make sense of it all. But sometimes, the most painful truth is that the person who hurt you will never offer the closure you deserve. You sit in your car, or in your room, or at work, holding back tears while pretending everything is fine. You smile at people, you laugh at jokes, you say you're okay, even when you're not, because healing in silence has become your only choice. You write journal entries filled with pain no one will read. You try to delete the memories, but they come rushing back when you least expect them. A song, a scent, a place, all reminders of something that once felt like home but now feels like loss. And the hardest part is knowing there's no one coming to fix it. You scroll through photos you can't delete yet. You revisit the moments that once felt like forever, and you ache. Not just for what was, but for the person you became in the process. Someone who loved deeply, someone who stayed loyal, someone who gave the kind of love that could have built something lasting. But instead, you're left with fragments, with pieces of yourself scattered in someone else's story. And it feels like you're the only one grieving something that mattered. like the love was one-sided even when your heart believed it was mutual. You start to realize that closure doesn't always come from the one who hurt you. It comes from choosing to walk away even when your heart still lingers. It comes from accepting apologies you never received, from forgiving someone who never said sorry, from letting go of a hand that never planned to hold yours forever. And that decision, that heartbreaking, soul-wrenching decision, is where your healing begins. Because healing isn't pretty. It's messy and painful and full of setbacks, but it's also powerful. It's choosing yourself in the aftermath of being left behind. You cry. A lot. Sometimes for reasons you can name, sometimes for reasons you can't. Some days you feel strong, other days you crumble under the weight of everything you're carrying. But through it all, you keep showing up, you keep breathing, you keep living, even when it feels impossible, because deep inside there's a quiet voice that refuses to give up on you, a whisper that says, you will not stay broken forever. And maybe that voice shakes, maybe it's quiet, but it's there, and it's real, and it's yours. One day, you stop waiting. You stop checking your phone. You stop wondering what could have been. And not because the pain is gone, but because you've grown tired of carrying it. You begin to reclaim yourself. Piece by piece, you rebuild your confidence, your peace, your joy. You smile without guilt. You speak without fear. You love without losing yourself. And that's when you realize the closure you needed was never a conversation. It was a decision, a choice to stop chasing answers from someone who never cared to explain, a choice to finally choose yourself